Good evening, everybody. We're back with Her Royal Highness Princess Lia because we didn't finish last week. We got cut off, so we're going to continue the conversation. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I've been camping out in the studio for 1 week, so I'd be punctual.
And I wanted to, I will present you this beautiful thing that I had arranged because last week you were so kind and you brought me flowers and I said I'd like to get something a little bit different. And I want to mention to everybody, did they notice we did not plan this, but she's in black and red and so am I. So I don't know if this is the Christmas spirit or...
The Boopsie twins,
I don't
who
know.
knows?
But I thought it was great. Welcome back.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you very much. Now, last week what happened, we got involved in looking at the pictures and there were so many stories and you have met so many interesting people. So,
like you.
Well, you're so sweet, thank you. But I'm dying to ask about some of the people there. So, the first thing everybody wanted me to ask you, okay? So I have a few questions that I want, and you feel as free and as much as you want to disclose. All right? How did you meet Prince Paul? Was it love at first sight? So many people have asked me. I said I don't know. So I said when she comes, I'm going to ask her.
Good. Actually, I was friends with his father and stepmother for quite a bit of time. And they kept on encouraging me, please, we'd like you to be introduced, etc. And I had to say at the time, because I was a postgraduate student in Oxford, I said, I'm not that clever. I'm having to study, I'm taking this very seriously, master's degree, and the competition is ruthless. So I don't have time. I have many friends. I don't need more friends. Thank you. Maybe later. Maybe later. So as it normally happens, the next chapter is that I made it a point of playing hooky once in a while from Oxford to do something. I had been the president of UNICEF when I was living in San Francisco. And so when there'd be a UNICEF event, I wanted to be on the committee to help behind the scenes as much as possible. And it was one of those occasions in the middle of the Bosnian War that there was a fundraiser held in London for the children, the war-weary children. And Princess Katerina, who is Paul's cousin, was also on the committee. And it was just one of those things where we got along very, very nicely without any premeditation. And then she introduces me afterwards to the speaker that night was Prince Paul. So quite literally, if you're asking the question, excuse me, was it love at first sight? Actually, it was respect at first sight because it was
That's a lovely, I like that. That is, you see, people,
such a
very good point.
Poignant speech, able to really talk about the fact that this is probably the first war that all of us have seen, baby boomers like myself, that had 3 religions that were so affected: Muslim, Christian, and of course the collateral damage were those people, communists, who would be atheists, let's say, brought into this bizarre war. And Paul was most articulate, very much answered the questions succinctly, and we became wonderful friends because, again, I had so much work to do. It would only be, let's say, are you going to this fundraiser, are you going to that? I was not a social butterfly. I don't think I've ever been a social butterfly. But when I am on a committee, I feel you've got to attend meetings. You can't just have self-glorification that you were on the right A-list committee. So it was also seeing him there and quite literally, we became solid friends for a good year, And then it was kind of, who are we fooling? Who are we fooling? We're such a, I was politically correct because my blood, darling, is more Romanian than most people, because my family tree on my mother's and father's side, having been, they were born in Arad and Alba Iulia.
Right.
It's very boring because it is nothing but Romanian Orthodox. So we didn't have inbreeding, let's say, but it was uncomplicated Romanian bloodline. And so it was, as I teased him, it was politically correct that he marry a Romanian and close the circle.
So 1 year you dated and you got closer?
Dated with no expectations. You know that famous movie, Friends with Benefits? It wasn't even that. We were very much attuned, and he wanted to bring a Kriostat machine to Romania, and this was put in ORL hospital. And what we decided to do is, you being such a belle of the ball in London when you come, people look forward to your arrival. The attitude is that I saw with friends, and I saw with the invitations, the stiffies that I received, people were getting a bit famine fatigue from all of the fundraisers, causes in Africa, the famine, and so on and so on. And with Romania, I thought, why don't we do a phantom fundraiser? So no one has to buy a new gown. No husband has to brush out the mothballs from his tux. It was dinners that friends had at their own invitation, their own list, their own work, and the husbands loved it because they gave the check. They had just fun and bonding with their friends, but we were able to raise about 50,000 pounds that went totally, not as has been the case with, let's say, the American Cancer Foundation, was very honest about the fact that their fundraisers, 60% of the proceeds went to the event. You know, to have the best hotel, to have the most incredible menu and the most incredible entertainment. I'm not in that school. I like to have as much possible going to the cause. And so we had no overhead, period. And it was delightful because carrying the individuals that helped carry this huge machine into Paul's apartment, we had it blessed by Părintele Pufăleta, who is such a sweetheart that he climbed up the stairs. He wanted to bless it for the people here. I believe it was one of the first new medical machines that came to Romania after the revolution. Yes. So
you moved to Romania, you met in London.
Yes.
You met in England, and then you decided to move back here, or was Paul living here? Or,
Paul was here.
Oh, he was living here, okay.
In the excuse my voice for being scratchy. I've had to be talking and made a speech at the Marriott today. Paul was the first member of any royal family to return to a Soviet bloc country after Glasnost. So while the, I'm sounding like Humphrey Bogart, excuse me. I'm sorry.
You're doing a very good Lauren Bacall.
Yes, or Melina Mercury, yes. The issue is that he came while the last throes of the revolution. And while he stayed at the Atene Palace, while they were having dinner, and there was a band, there was only 5 people that were there. He was with SIPA Press, Reuters, Associated Press, etc. And they didn't know whether it was gunfire or the from the drum roll, as they say, because there was that period of shooting. But literally, what was his journey to come here, and this is what I fell in love with, that a dear friend of ours, Mark Burka, if you're watching, because I know you're a dear friend of both of ours, we both have such good taste in friends. Mark had organized a private plane filled with charitable necessities, and there were quite a few Romanians that wanted to come, even though there was the risk that Otopen, now Enriquanda, was in a war zone, let's say, and you couldn't get in without a huge protocol. So what happened is that literally, with, let's say, communists who didn't know if Romania would roll back into communists, period. Let's say people who had it very good during communist times were trying to stop Paul and this plane load of charitable gifts. No missionary work, no propaganda, but here, please take whatever you can, portable medical equipment, medical needs, so on. And they tried to take the passports from Mark before he checked in, because he had all the passports of people. It was the last throw, the last death groan of individuals who did not want Romania to go on the path of liberty. So
I didn't know that story about Mark, by the way.
Oh, yes.
When I see him next time and ask it, I will mention that, because actually he's in part of our clip.
Mark was the hero, because he was chased around Heathrow. Can you imagine that?
No,
but
I can't
it just very, very much a outmoded Soviet mentality. Not Russian, Soviet.
Were you a little bit afraid? Weren't you maybe scared to come back, and because of the situation, it was fluid, nobody knew exactly what was happening, where it was going?
Well, I pretty much felt that there was some reason we decided we wanted to get married in Romania, because this would, in a very sophisticated way, force the world press, and they were there to see the street children, the street dogs, the stories of people suffering from AIDS, the neglected babies,
the
and
orphans.
We said no.
They were showing only the orphans.
If you are coming only to see a situation that needs to progress and is being handled as best they can, then we don't want you here. You're a guest at our wedding. You'll have exclusive with the Spanish-speaking world, you'll have exclusivity with the English-speaking world, etc. We want to show you also the true treasure of Romania, and that's our intellectuals, our artists, our women, are a special breed, a very special breed. And so the fear factor was really more of a constant water torture of, why are you getting married in Romania? We won't have food. We might be in danger of picking up AIDS, all of this nonsense. And the guests that we were able to convince, the majority we were not able to, because there was such bizarre press about Romania. So they came with suitcases filled with soap
Don't tell me.
canned food,
Oh my goodness.
etc., etc.
Really?
And absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
And it was a delightful surprise for them.
I bet.
Amen. Amen. My fear factor. I knew enough about the Romanians through the diaspora, the situation here. I had nothing but respect for the courage of individuals surviving in the worst of times, but also the ability that when I was in the Carter White House, one saw what was being done with trying to change the image of Romania with that world tour that Ceausescu had, starting off in Great Britain, moving to France, Switzerland, Sweden, etc., etc. So I very much always appreciated that Romanians value the one thing that no one can take away from you, and that's your education. So I came not with high hopes. I'd lived my life. I did what I wanted to do. I hit the goals through luck that I dreamed of. And I made the necessary mistakes and survived through them to make me more prepared for Romania. And what I mean by that is that several of the experiences, like one of the pictures you'll be seeing, when I was asked in the Reagan administration to accompany a delegation to Ethiopia. And they were puzzled why the tons and tons of humanitarian shipments of food were rotting on the docks. And simple answer, it was a civil war. They would rather have a trail of tears where the Eritreans would have to march to come to Addis Ababa to receive the food. The thousands of people that died in that exodus was just heartbreaking. But the one story that was always in my heart, you being such a Londoner, remember the courage of foul-mouthed Sir, he was in the Rats, the Boon Bay Rats. He did
Boomtown Rats?
Band-Aid. Band-Aid.
I think are you talking about Bob? Bob Geldof?
Bob Geldof, of course. Well, no, he's been knighted.
I know he's
yes.
Sir Bob Geldof.
And
he was the one who organized everything.
I was on the committee.
Really? Oh my God, I want to hear all about this now.
Okay. Remember, I'm a San Franciscan.
Okay.
And Bill Graham, the legendary maestro that had the best concerts, did everything. He was asked to do Band-Aid. He was able to pick up the phone and convince Madonna and all of the greats of rock and roll at that time. I was on the committee with Bill because we had done various charitable events. And literally, he had raised £9 million sterling from Band-Aid, the back-to-back fundraiser that was in I think it was in Wembley and Philadelphia. So quite a few of us had taken the plane to be in both places. What was interesting is that Bob was there in Ethiopia, and pretty much it was, well, thank you, white boy. You've done your part. Now, out of here, because the dictator, the communist Colonel Mengistu, was, I don't know, perhaps wanting to put a certain amount in his pocket, but he wasn't going to allow Bob to buy foods and sacks of grains, fill up an airplane with this money, and ship it personally to Eritrea to finish the job, because he's such an incredible, amusing person that probably the most foul-mouthed person. Every 20th word is F you. This is S
okay,
product.
I'm
so
not so
on.
surprised.
Bleep, 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 bleep. But once you get over that and listen to his heart, he pulled off.
He did it.
He went into studios, knocked on the door, and said, George Michaels, get over, do the Christmas album.
Everybody did that. I remember that, by the way.
Yes,
yes.
yes.
I was there. Well, I wasn't there physically, but it was one of the, I mean, the whole planet knew about it.
Sure.
It was really a heck of an accomplishment.
And he inspired the 4 wives of the Beatles to do a fundraiser for Romania. And that was all of the 4 women behind the throne.
Oh, you're
yes,
just a wealth
he did.
Of information.
Yes,
Okay.
I think it was Angel Campaign, it was called. And George Harrison's widow was the brains behind this. And I mean, of course, that was one of the times I was able to pull in His Royal Highness Prince Karol Mircea to be honorary chairperson on this. And the point, going back to Ethiopia, was that Bob Geldof is there. He can't get a plane. He has been stopped by the authorities of interfering too much. So we're staying at the same hotel, and we're really talking over breakfast that there was an immense banquet for us, and we said, we can't. This was the Minister of Culture and the Foreign Minister that welcomed the delegation, if you will. And we were very transparent. We needed to look at the docks, the shipping docks, to figure out why Japanese, Italian, and American ships were being held in a queue with perishable goods. And why was the Soviet fleet able to jump the queue? Because it was filled with guns and uniforms, unfortunately. So we were there. Literally, I had the experience that, we had said, please, we don't want this wonderful food. And then, I got a elbow in the rib. We're embarrassing them. We could have a political faux pas. So we ate graciously. Thank you very much. This is wonderful.
I would have thought sorry, but when people are starving down the road.
I know. Why?
And eating all of this,
Why?
it would really stick in my throat.
Exactly.
I understand
but
completely.
we needed his permission to get onto the Hercules C-130 that was filled with the rice and dry goods, et cetera, so desperately needed. So the only thing that will put a chuckle on your audience, leave it to Romanians, and I'm symmetrical like Romanians are. This Minister of Culture, and we won't say his name, he's asking me if I want to dance and so on, and I said, oh, I'm married, I really, thank you so much, but no, I'm not very good at this, so I don't offend him. And then he was a little bit, I'm not flattering myself, but a little bit flirting. And he said, isn't it interesting that a black woman should be married to a super lawyer who's American? And I said, a black woman? Who are you talking about? Is there another wife I don't know about to Melvin Belli? And he said, no, it's you. And I said, well, no, okay. I'm white. And he said, but the rest of the delegation is black. And I said, yes. And he said, but aren't you high yeller? Which means I can pass for white. And I said,
he actually asked you that question?
Oh, yes, he did.
Oh, my goodness.
So from being a good-looking black woman, I don't know if I should laugh
or cry.
Yeah, for being a nice-looking black woman, I became a dog, a white dog, for having cheated, playing with him.
So turning
again,
him down, huh?
I was afraid. Oh no, he wasn't that bold, but nonetheless, we were afraid that maybe I wouldn't get on the plane. So I was very careful to be totally polite and ladylike. Of course, I mean, why not? So we get, we're having breakfast, and there's Geldof, and he's saying, blah, 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 I can't get on here, F you, da, 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 da. And we said, well, wait a minute, we've got plenty of room. There are no seats. You will be strapped as the troopers are. You know, you're literally hanging on a rope because we want all the room for the foodstuffs.
For the aid, yeah.
And we're prepared to do this. So would you like to come on board? Would you like to come on board? And, you know, F yes, et cetera, et cetera. When they found out that we outsmarted them, they gave him a ticket so that he could go on a later flight so that all the press would cover the Reagan administration and not give Geldof the hero's welcome that he deserved. But again, he wasn't in it for the glory.
No, he wasn't.
He totally deserved his knighthood.
I agree with you. And I wanted to just interrupt you for a second. You are the most amazing ambassador for Romania. I've heard you speak at many events, okay? I wanted to tell you. And the way you talk about it, and the way you're so proud of it, and the way you talk about the women and the culture, it's lovely. And it's a pleasure for me to listen to that. And you really represent everybody so well that I wanted to say that.
Thank you, dear. Thank you. From you, I must say it warms my heart.
Thank you. Now, I have other questions. So,
yes.
So they wanted to know how you fell in love, if it was love at first sight.
Well,
Then,
can I also say,
yeah,
I think, certainly not that Paul met his match, but
I would say yes. I would.
Very much like the fact,
well suited together.
best friends, exactly. I very much noted that he remained fast friends with his past girlfriends, and they spoke so highly of him. They were in love, they were dating, etc., etc., and then they went their separate ways, but nothing vicious on either side. And the other thing that I think, the moment he said, this is going to be fun, being married to me. Serious, very
never a
straight,
dull moment, I'm
never
sure.
Never a dull moment.
I'm
All
sure
right.
there's never a dull moment.
We were talking because we saw Larry, the fellow from CNN, Larry Larry King.
It's a good thing I can
A
throw
princess doesn't remember a king? Shame on me.
That's a good one.
Only for Nora am I here, by the way. I didn't sleep last night, not because of nerves. I had to do calls to California, which is 10 hours, so I'm a zombie a bit. So Larry King had a show, and it was from a countess, American, who married a Spanish count, and in World War II, she was a spy for the Americans because Spain was neutral. And she had, he was an ambassador, and she would have one night where it's the Gestapo and the Germans, and another night where it would be the Allies. And she would be picking up and having the Allies meeting or a cocktail party after. And she was quite taking a risk. And her book was called The Lady, I think it was The Spy Wore Red. That sort of title. And we were talking and at a gathering, and they said, absolutely, I believed Larry King's question, how could you be a spy? You're so good looking, and anyone, you wouldn't be able to blend in at all. And she said, only a man would say this, because without makeup, I'm unrecognizable. So we're talking about this, and Paul and I, he drove me back to school, to Oxford, and we talked about, I said, frankly, I think probably the best spies that never get lauded are women, because with the change of a hairstyle, with a different makeup, truly we can pass. And I said Romanian women are probably best suited because we can pass for so many nationalities. And poo-poo, no, that's not the case. And I said, I'll make you a bet. £1, £1. I will be able to carry on a conversation with you, and you won't know it's me. You're on. You're on.
Okay, how'd you do that?
So what I did is I got
this.
blue contact lenses.
Yeah.
I put earplugs in my nose to disproportionate, made freckles, bought a horrible strawberry blonde wig, and put a balloon here, okay? So I used a payphone, and it was half a block from his apartment building. And I said, oh, please, would you do me a favor? I'm at the train station. Would you pick me up? I need a favor. And he said, absolutely, not a worry. He's thinking I'm at the train station. So I hang up and I toddle on to his car, and I'm there. He comes running out, and I'm going, could you tell me where the nearest hospital? Please, I need the nearest hospital. Oh my, are you all right? And I said, no, I'm not all right. I'm not all right. And then I leaned on the hood, or the bonnet, if you will. Bing, bloom, and he went, ah, like this. And I started laughing so hard, and I said, you owe me £2. You owe me £2, period.
But you know what I was thinking? Because the mannerisms and all that he would be familiar with, so he would suss it immediately.
Could be, but it works. So the point is,
oh my God, I would have loved to see his face.
That's probably the one little advice I would give to anyone who's looking for a partner. Make sure you also put that ingredient of fun in the recipe.
I think that's where I want to go. So, what is it about the princess life? Because last time we did not talk about it. And people have asked me, what is it like to live your life as a real princess? So I said, I'm going to ask her the question directly.
If one cannot be useful, it's a waste of one's energy, one's resources, and it's against my nature to simply live a fairy tale life, not a Grimm's fairy tale, but if it is productive, that is the most rewarding word, is that your contribution, your speech, your fundraising. What I have found is that there are, with your knowledge of heraldic tradition, there has been a so-called pushy princess, there's been the people's princess. I'm the pragmatic princess.
I like that.
And for me,
well said,
to have these wonderful friends who are either dignitaries, former heads of state, celebrities, etc., to have that magic Rolodex and not use it, and on the other hand, to have contacts that I made with the Reagan administration of corporations that want to break in to Eastern Europe. I had said to medical equipment firms, to medicines, to cosmetic firms, to construction firms, don't just come in and spend a fortune for television ads, because this is what works in the West. We will move forward and absorb this, but to come in and be the sponsor of scholarships, to underwrite the Academia de Musica, our wonderful music academy, to come in like Siemens had and refit the classic Colția hospital. This will be your legacy, and frankly, it will help your branding. So what I found the most rewarding is to bring in, excuse me, friends like, I have a mother's network. Call up Valerie Campbell. How are you doing, et cetera, et cetera. Can you and your daughter come for a launch of breast cancer awareness? And we had, at that, it was 300,000 pounds sterling of sterile medical materials. When companies give that, they're not competing with Mother Teresa. They want publicity. And it just wasn't happening. So I said, let's tie the British medical companies and the pharmaceutical companies, their gift, their plane load of gift, with Naomi's visit. And we got 83 countries doing good reporting on her trip. Why? Because it was Romania? No. Why? Because it was 300,000 pounds of donations? No. Because it was Naomi.
And Campbell. By the way, I met her mother at an event in London.
Even more beautiful than her daughter.
I want to tell you, I didn't know when I met her. And there was a picture I remember in the Hello magazine, because my friend David was so cross. How did you get the picture? I was sitting with her and Linford Christie. Stunning looking woman. And I was like, but you look like really her sister, not joking.
Oh, indeed.
Stunning
the most
looking woman.
Beautiful, creamy,
I was like,
cafe
wow,
au lait
gorgeous.
complexion.
Now, I have another question, because in the background, I have seen, well, I've seen Steven Seagal. I saw, who's coming, Samuel L. Jackson, who is coming to film a movie shortly.
Kissinger.
I've seen so many people. This is a tough question, but I don't know who is, out of all these most amazing, interesting people, who touched you the most? Who was?
Without hesitation, of these people who have been so generous of their time and their connections for Romania, and we make it very clear that we want you to behave yourself, no diva mentality here. I need you to help let them know how proud you are to be here in Romania, because we are a work in progress at the time. It would have to be Joe DiMaggio.
Really?
And why?
Yeah, why?
Because I was asked by the State Department to help on the fact that the Oprah Winfrey of Russia at the time was Vladimir Posner. Vladimir Posner was the spokesperson for Gorbachev, spoke American English, had an American sense of humor, because his father had been in the UN mission in New York, and so this kid grew up as an American, can do the Brooklyn accent, the clenched teeth, proud accent of the elite, all of these wonderful absorptions that he had gotten as a child. He was plucked out because of the HUAC investigations, and his father was afraid that any friendship he might have with an American would be held against that American, and he would be called in for, he or she would be called in for the McCarthy hearings. So they left. Well, he had written a book because he had been the top talk show host in Russia, and a huge advantage for friendship between the two countries. So his book got all of the wonderful interviews on ABC, CBS, the entire alphabet soup of morning shows, and it saturated. So by the time he crossed the Mississippi, everyone had done Vladimir Posner. So I was asked to figure out a way to help his book get publicity, and serious publicity. So I thought, well, one of my heroes is Patton, and one of the things that General Patton had said, do not believe only what you read about someone. Try to read what they write about themselves or a book written by them. And this was how he won with El Alamein. So I decided to take a good bit of advice, and I read Posner's book. There was the answer. His all-time hero was Joe DiMaggio. Another coincidence in my life. Serendipity is my middle name. Posner adored him. He wrote just breathlessly about him. Joe DiMaggio is a San Franciscan. We had an earthquake in '89, and Mr. DiMaggio was on the television talking about, be calm, here's the number you should be calling, being a good citizen. So I had a program at the time, ABC, and I checked with all of my sources, where does he live? I want to invite him to the Posner reception. Nobody knows. He was quite a hermit, but he goes periodically to a particular bar, and he meets his friends there and so on. And I said, well, I can't exactly hang out in a bar. People will wonder a little bit. And I was with my driver, and I saw a Federal Express. I said, let's ask. Let's be totally truthful. I spoke with the driver, and I said, I'm not a groupie. And he said, Mrs. Belli, I recognize you from television. What can I do to help you? And I said, could you give me the address? I understand he lives really, by the bay. Can you tell me his address? And he said, no, it's against Federal Express policy. But if you go to that yellow home there, that's where he stays with his sister. And I said, you never heard it from me. Never heard it from me.
Well, now everybody's heard it, so I don't want to be responsible for any
of
that.
But he's in heaven right now. He's in heaven right now. So I knock on the door, hand the letter, and I said, if you'd be so kind to give this to your brother. I don't want anything. We're not soliciting for a fundraiser for the earthquake or anything, but it's an invitation that would help the State Department, and he is such a patriot. If you could just, even if he can't make it, maybe a note for Posner.
Right.
Well, Joe DiMaggio gets on the phone. I'll be happy to help. What can I do? I said, be yourself, be yourself. So, because it was Russia, we had all of these princes, merchant princes, wanting to come to meet the man who had Gorbachev's ear. Stephen Jobs was there. Never met Stephen Jobs before. He called up, may I come, may I come? Of course, of course. The Haas family, Blue Jeans, the giants of Silicon Valley were there. And it was like little boys. They stood in line, multi-millionaires. Mr. DiMaggio, could you autograph my baseball? Well, that baseball after that is worth $20,000 without hesitation, without hesitation. So I laughed with them afterwards and I said, I know he's going to be invited to Russia. So what would help is that if you can help on half of the airfare and the accommodations, we must make it a private trip so that he's not in any way involved in politics. And of course they did. But Joe DiMaggio was such a gentleman, and it made a lot of pre-press, this event. Who calls but Rudolf Nureyev?
Oh,
and another
I don't have to do it again. We have
I
another minute, and I have so many things to ask you.
Well, what happened is that Nureyev was unable to come back to Russia because he was the first one to defect. and he was wanting so much to see his mother. Now that we have Glagnos, he was saying, maybe I don't have to lose face by begging Gorbachev, but I can meet Posner. And I said, not only can you meet, I'll put my sitting room aside. The two of you can talk after the party, and whatever happens, we wish you well. And he was able to visit. But he was, you saw the picture of him, the black and white news picture. I mean, he also...
And I wanted to say thank you so much.
He didn't know about Joe DiMaggio.
For sharing all of this.
Yes.
They're telling me again, my time. I don't know how it happens with you, Leah. Just the time goes like this. I would like to thank Her Royal Highness Princess Leia for joining us. And say good night, y'all. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing again the pictures with us. See you next week. Bye.
Thank you.